Naima and her family have been in Ingolstadt, Germany for a week, but their thoughts are focused on Syria, the homeland they had to flee. Syrian vegetable soup is served with German toast. The family are still getting used to their new surroundings. Back in Syria, they had an apartment, friends, and neighbors. Now they have just 20 square meters, but they're alive. The father says it's good to be here. They feel safe. They're not afraid of the horrors anymore, he says. That gives him comfort and peace of mind. While most people in Germany are busy getting ready for Christmas, the Al Ahmad family can think about only one thing: Syria. The father, Mohammed, says 2 of his children remain in the country. They were only able to take their youngest son, 16-year-old Yahia, with them to Germany. Mohammed says of course they're worried. Every now and then he talks to his other children on the phone. He wishes they could also come to Germany, especially his daughter, who has children herself. Naima can't help but think of her daughter every time she cooks. During the course of filming, she repeatedly asks if I can help them bring their other children to Germany. Shavin is another Syrian refugee living in the asylum seekers' housing in Ingolstadt. Shavin helps look out for the Al Ahmad family and accompanies them when they have to meet with authorities or doctors. Shavin studied in Cologne and can speak German. Coming to Germany wasn't easy for the Al Ahmad family. Their escape took months. One time they spent 5 days hiding in a truck. And they've used up all their savings. They paid smugglers 21,000 euros and don't even know if they'll be allowed to stay in Germany. Shavin lives 2 doors down the hall from the family. She too had to leave everything behind when she fled Syria. The teddy bears and books were gifts from relatives of hers living in Germany. They help cheer her up when she's feeling lonely. Shavin also arrived here a week ago. I asked her what it felt like at first. She says it was extremely tough leaving Syria the way things are now. She wasn't planning to flee, but she was in danger, and so were her parents and family. She says she had to leave, which is why it was so awful. She says it wasn't simply a matter of deciding to go to Germany. The holiday season's focus on the family adds to Shavin's sadness. She says it's painful because she and others are so far away from family and relatives. Shavin keeps in touch via Facebook and spends a lot of time in internet cafes. Here she feels a little closer to the people she misses so much. She says they had good times in Damascus and hopes that one day they'll return. But for now, Shavin is far away and wants to know what's happening back home. She shows me pictures friends in Syria have posted online. Many have joined the forces against the Assad regime. Shavin and a friend smuggled anesthetics into the country. Shavin says there are a lot of children and other people who had to be operated on without anesthetics. She says the current situation in Syria is a disaster, that people are simply being killed, and that chemical weapons are being used. There's no independent confirmation that's the case, but Shavin believes the rumors. She says it's terrible, simply terrible, and that it's hard for her to look at the photos. She tells me the picture was from Damascus. It's not just the latest casualties that upset her, it's what's happened to Syria. Shavin says Syria used to be a nice country and that people used to live in peace side by side. Then, all at once, everything fell apart and there were so many deaths. She says it's all too much for her and for Damascus. Shavine tells me she's thankful to be here in Germany, thankful to still be alive. She says people in Germany have been kind to her and that they have compassion. They're aware of the situation in Syria. Back at the refugee housing, the Al-Ahmad's son Yahia is at home. He's been traumatized since losing his best friend in the war. I never heard him speak once during the 2 days I spent with the family. Yahia shows me a picture of another friend whose arm was struck by metal shrapnel from a bomb attack. He saved a few pictures of friends on his mobile phone. They're the only pictures the family have in Germany. The family had to flee after the father fell afoul of the regime for refusing to help government troops. He says he didn't want to collaborate with people who were causing Syria so much pain and grief. He says he just couldn't do it. I ask what exactly the army has done. His answer? That they have tortured, murdered, and ruined the entire country. Mohammed is suffering from a bad burn on his foot and has to go back to the hospital today. After his arrival in Germany, he had to sleep on the floor in a refugee camp and burned his foot on the heater. He didn't notice it since he's diabetic and his nerves don't react to pain. Now his foot is swollen and he has to see a doctor. On the way there, once again, conversation turns to Syria. They say they want to tell me, a German journalist, what's really going on. They say it's worse than everyone thinks and that the death toll is really much higher. The Al-Ahmad family has also lost relatives. Mohammed says 7 of his cousins were killed in a massacre in their village. Another 4 were killed in a separate explosion. He says all these people were relatives of his and that there's no end to the news of deaths and suffering. He says he found out just this morning that 2 more of his cousins have died. Shavine is accompanying Mohammed to the hospital since he doesn't understand any German, and Shavine can translate for him. As a trained pharmacist, she also has some basic medical knowledge. It's dark by the time we leave the hospital, but at least Mohammed's foot has been taken care of. The next day, I go into Ingolstadt with Shavine to visit a church. She's a Christian, and her father is a pastor. While we admire the windows, Shavine tells me that she hasn't been inside a church in a long time. She used to go regularly, but since war broke out in her country, she hasn't set foot in one. Shavine says the nativity scene and the church are pretty, but all she can think about are the people she cares about in Syria. She says she only fled because her family was in danger. She would have preferred to stay and help people in need. Shavine says it's winter now, and the situation has gotten even worse in Syria since there's no oil and gas, and food has run out. Shavine doesn't believe the war will be over soon and thinks it'll be a long time before she can go home again. She's waiting to get her passport back, and until then, she has to stay put at the refugee home. Among her few possessions are this book that her aunt and uncle in Germany gave her. She says the book is an Arabic translation of Friedrich Nietzsche. I ask why Nietzsche, and she replies, maybe because she's living in Germany now. Shavin is getting used to life in Germany, and there are moments when she's happy. But then it's time to go. A new family from Syria needing help has arrived. Naima has prepared tea, sweet tea, like the kind served in Syria. Mohammed keeps his mobile phone within reach, and it's almost as if it's his way of being closer to his friends and family in Syria. But he says he doesn't feel lonely. After all, he has his wife and son at his side. I ask what the future holds for him. He says he wants to go back to Syria just as soon as it's safe enough to do so. He says it's his homeland and that he wants to be close to his friends and family. The Al Ahmads are Muslim and don't celebrate Christmas, but they're happy for Germans and thankful they can be here. They say that on Christmas Eve, they'll pray for their families and the people in Syria whose lives are still in danger. Shavin doesn't want any part of the Christmas festivities. She isn't in the mood to celebrate this year. She says many people are sad because they've lost relatives in the fighting. She says it's a humanitarian disaster in Syria and that celebration is out of the question right now. She says Syria reeks of death and there can be no joy. Shavin and her relatives in Germany plan to get together for Christmas, not to celebrate, but to try and cheer each other up. Shavin hopes one day she'll feel like celebrating again with her family back home in Syria.